Hey guys, tonight we're peeling back the shiniest lie the 20th century ever told about itself: the spotless suburban kitchen, the single paycheck, and the mother who supposedly never once worked a day for money. Not in the factories, not on the street corners, not on her knees in a stranger's bathroom before dawn. No, according to the magazines, she was home in a pressed apron, waiting beside a casserole for a husband whose one wage somehow covered everything. I'm always amazed you keep drifting back here to be gently bored into unconsciousness. If one of these stories has ever switched you off before you reach the end of it, a quiet press of that subscribe button passes the same small mercy along to the next person lying awake. And if your thumbs are still moving, drop a comment telling me where you're dozing off from and what your own grandmother did for money that never made it into the family photos. Now settle in. Kill the overhead light, nudge the fan up a notch, and haul the blanket right up to your ears. Maybe leave the ironing for the morning, just this once. Ever wondered how a whole decade convinced itself that mothers weren't working while the number of working mothers quietly doubled? Why a washing machine sold to save you time could send you out to earn its monthly payment? How it felt to be hired for a whole day out of a stranger's car window at 15 cents an hour? Could you run a boarding house, a laundry, and a 9-year-old out of the same 3 rooms? Why was a full paycheck that paid the rent politely called pin money? And who decided a house key on a string counted as childcare? Congratulations. You have just woken up in working-class America, somewhere around 1955, and dawn is still an hour off. The stove is cold and the baby is already up. There is a bundle of someone else's laundry by the door and a little book in the drawer that wants $1 you have not earned yet. And across town, a woman in a car is already deciding what your whole day is worth. Good luck. You are awake before the house is, before the sky is, before the stove is. It is still dark when your feet find the cold floor, and the first job of your day is the one nobody pays you for. You light the stove and wait for the kitchen to stop being freezing. You lay out clothes, you start the oatmeal, you check the coins in the jar. By the time the children stir, the illusion is already running smoothly. A house that seems to feed and warm itself while everyone else sleeps. The stove is the first argument of the day, and you usually lose the opening round. It is a cast iron thing with a temper, and it wants coaxing, kindling, and a small blasphemy muttered under your breath before it agrees to catch. You crouch in the dark and feed it splinters of wood until the orange finally takes hold, and only then does the kitchen begin, grudgingly, to forgive you for being awake at this hour. The cold in the room has weight to it. It sits on the linoleum like a lodger who does not pay rent. You work in the half-light because turning on every lamp costs money, and money is the one thing this house has strong opinions about. The oatmeal goes on, the kettle goes on. You lay out 4 sets of clothes over the backs of the chairs in the order the children will need them, smallest to largest, like a museum exhibit titled "People Who Will Shortly Be Screaming About Socks." Your husband is still asleep, and you let him be, because his shift is long and his back is worse than yours, and this is simply the division of the world the two of you live inside. Somebody has to be first up. In this house, it is you. The way it was your mother before her, a long line of tired, patient, unthanked women who lit cold stoves so that others could wake into warmth and call it natural. The baby wakes. The baby always knows. There is some private alarm inside a 9-month-old that goes off the exact instant you have both hands full, and you scoop her onto one hip and keep stirring with the other, having grown, over the years, a sort of third arm made entirely of willpower. She considers your ear as a possible breakfast. She is delighted at this hour, in a way that would be genuinely charming if you were also a person who had slept. She has no idea what year it is. Lucky her. Mrs. Kowalski upstairs is awake too. You can hear her floorboards creak in the exact same pattern every single morning, the tread of another woman doing the identical unpaid choreography one ceiling up, and there is a strange comfort in it. The two of you moving through the dark like a shift change at a factory nobody built and nobody thought to name. She taps the pipe once with a spoon. You tap back. It means good morning. It means still alive. It means the coffee, when there is coffee, will be worth getting up for. By the time the sky finally does something with itself, you have already made breakfast, packed lunches into tin pails, found exactly one shoe, refereed a war over the last of the jam, and wiped a small face that did not wish to be wiped. None of this is a job in the sense of a job that pays. All of it is a job in the sense that if you did not do it, the day itself would not open. The apron comes off, and the good dress underneath has to go out now and earn. You drink your coffee standing at the sink, looking at a kitchen that is, for one held breath, clean, warm, and full of fed children. It is the closest thing to the advertisement you will get all day. Then you check the clock, hand the baby to your eldest, and go. The paid day has not even begun. You have already worked 3 hours. You sit at the kitchen table on a Sunday night with a pencil, the rent, and a coffee can of money, and you do the arithmetic that decides the week. His pay goes down on one side. The rent goes on the other, then the payment book, then the coal, the milk, the shoes the boy has already outgrown. You add it twice, because you want it to come out differently the second time. It does not. There is a gap at the bottom of the column, and the gap has your name on it, because closing it is your job. The coffee can is the family bank, and it has a worse credit rating than it lets on. You unfold the bills one at a time and flatten them on the oilcloth, and you build them into little towers, the way a general might arrange troops he already suspects are going to lose. This tower is rent. This shorter tower is food. This small, embarrassed, and hopeful stack of coins is everything else that might happen to 5 people over 7 days. The pencil is doing honest work tonight, which is more than you can say for the wages. You write the numbers small, because small numbers feel more manageable, which is a lie your hand tells your stomach. Rent is $38 a month. His check, when it comes and when it comes whole, does not stretch the way the men who set it seem to imagine it stretches. Somewhere a person in an office decided what a family costs, and then rounded down, and then went home to a family that cost more. The magazines will never print the modern trick of it. The advertisement shows a woman gazing lovingly at a refrigerator, and the country calls that the good life, and the good life turns out to run on a second wage that the same country insists does not exist. You are the invisible engine under the shining hood. You are the reason the arithmetic closes at all, and you are also, officially, not working. You tally what you can bring in yourself. The Hendersons pay you to do their wash. The diner takes you Thursdays and Fridays. There is talk of a boarder. You add these in, quietly, like a woman slipping a card up her own sleeve, and slowly, dollar by grudging dollar, the gap begins to shrink. It does not close. It never fully closes. It just becomes a gap you can survive, which is a different and lesser kind of miracle. Your husband comes in from the front room and stands behind you, looking at the columns over your shoulder, and he does not say much, because there is not much a proud man can say to a page like this. He puts a hand on your shoulder. He tells you the overtime might come back in the spring. You both agree to believe this, the way you agree, on certain nights, to believe in a number that is $1 friendlier than the real one. The children think money comes from the tin, the way water comes from the tap, and you would like to keep them thinking it a while longer. You have never once let them see this table on a Sunday night. The arithmetic is a private thing, a thing you do after they are asleep, so that the morning can look like a morning and not like a ledger. You put the towers back into the can. You fold the rent into its own separate paper, sacred and set aside. You have made the week work again, on paper, by hand, the way you make everything work in this house, which is to say through effort that leaves no trace and gets no line in any budget anyone will ever read. Then you turn off the good lamp, and you sit for 1 more minute in the dark, with the can in your lap, doing the last and quietest sum of all, which is how worn you are against how much of the week is left. You keep a small booklet in the drawer beside the bread knife, and every month it wants $1 you have already spent. It is the payment book for the washing machine, the one the salesman promised would hand you your Saturdays back. You put a little down and agreed to a number every month, and the number does not care what kind of week you had. It arrives on the same day whether the work came or not. So each month you find the $1 somewhere, because the machine that was meant to save you has become one more thing you owe. The salesman was a marvel, polished, patient, and utterly shameless. You will give him that. He came to the door in a hat and a smile and a suit that had been pressed by someone, and he spoke about the machine the way a preacher speaks about the hereafter. He talked about your hands. He looked, with great sympathy, at your hands, red and cracked from the tub, and he said no woman in this modern age should have to ruin herself over a washboard. It was a lovely speech. It was also, you now understand, the exact sound a hook makes going in. The machine itself is genuinely good, which is the cruel part. It churns and it drains and it rings, and it does in an hour what used to take you a raw and steaming morning. If the story ended there, it would be a happy one. But the machine came with a little book, and the little book comes to life on the first of every month like a small paper creditor who lives in your drawer and never sleeps. $12 down. A few dollars a month for what feels like the rest of your natural life. On paper, it was reasonable. On paper, it always is. Nobody down at the store mentions that a monthly payment is a promise you make to your future self, who is even more weary than you and has even less to spare. The trap has a very modern shape. The appliance is sold to give you time, and then the appliance must be paid for, and paying for it takes time, so you go out and sell your hours to a stranger to buy back the hours the machine was supposed to give you for free. It is a perfect little circle, and you are running inside it, and the wheel it turns belongs to somebody who is not you. Mr. Dooley, who collects for the store, comes by on the second if you have missed the first, and he is not cruel about it. Exactly. He takes off his hat. He waits on the step. He has a small ledger of his own and a pencil behind his ear, and he makes a soft, apologetic mark next to your name that manages to be more frightening than any shouting could be. You pay him at the door with money that was going to be shoes, and the shoes wait another week, and the boy's toes make their opinion known through the leather. The whole street is on the same schedule. You can almost hear it. The first of the month, a soft rustle of little books opening in 100 kitchens at once, a neighborhood of women all owing the same few dollars to the same few stores for the same shining machines that were each, individually, going to change everything. You do not regret the machine. That is what you tell yourself, and mostly you mean it, because the alternative is the washboard and the raw morning, and the mother you watched wear herself down to nothing over a tub. Progress is real. It simply comes on installments, $1 at a time, and the first payment is always your rest. You slide the little book back into the drawer beside the bread knife, where it waits, patient as a tick, for the calendar to turn over and make it hungry again. You stand on a corner in the Bronx with a paper bag under your arm, and inside the bag are the clothes you will change into to clean someone else's home. It is early and cold. There are other women on the corner, each with her own bag, each watching the same slow traffic. You are waiting to be hired for the day, or for an hour, by whoever rolls down a window and names a price. There is no office, no application, no wage anyone has promised you. There is only the curb, and the cars, and the waiting. The women call it the market, and they say the word flatly, the way you would name a weather, something cold, ordinary, and entirely out of your hands. There is a market on this corner and another over by the avenue, and everyone knows where, and no sign announces them. You found this one the way you find most things, from another woman on a bad week. She told you where to stand and how early to come and to bring your own rag if you had one, because some of the houses do not provide even that. The bag is the uniform, if you can call it that. Inside is an old Hauser dress kept only for scrubbing, because you will not ruin your good one on somebody's floor, and a pair of hands' worth of readiness. The other women hold theirs the same way, tucked under the arm like a schoolbook, and the bags are how the whole corner recognizes itself. A woman with a paper bag on this corner at this hour is not waiting for a trolley. She is inventory. That is the word for it, and it is an ugly word, and it is the true one. Journalists came once and stood where you were standing and wrote it all down, and one of them, a black woman named Miss Cook, put on a Hauser dress and joined the line herself, and called the corner exactly what the women called it. She waited, like you, to be bought for an hour, or if the day went well, a whole day. That was years ago. The corner has not moved. The cars come slow along the curb, and each one is a small verdict. A window rolls down. A woman inside looks the line over the way you might look over apples at a stand, checking for bruises, for the ones that will last. You straighten a little without meaning to. Everyone does. It is a terrible thing to catch yourself doing, arranging your own face into something worth hiring. You do it anyway, because the corner is where the rent comes from. Some mornings a car stops in 10 minutes and you are gone before your feet have gone numb. Some mornings you stand for 2 hours while the cold climbs up through your shoes and settles in behind your knees, and the traffic passes, and the little towers on your Sunday table start doing frightened sums in your head. You do not leave. Leaving guarantees nothing. Staying only mostly guarantees nothing, which on this corner counts as hope. There is a strange, tired sisterhood in the line, though nobody would call it that out loud. You share the good news and the bad. That house on the hill pays fare and feeds you lunch. That one on Walton counts the silver when you leave and pays a nickel under what she said. The corner keeps its own records, passed woman to woman, an entire economy with a memory and no paperwork at all. A brown sedan slows. The window comes down. A gloved hand appears, and behind it a face deciding what you are worth before it has heard your name. You shift the bag to your other arm and meet the look, because this is the job before the job, the standing and the being seen, and you have gotten very good at a thing no one should ever have to be good at. The car idles. The morning holds its breath. You wait to find out if today has started. You get the nod from a car window, and just like that you have work. A woman leans out, looks you over, and names what she will pay. And the naming is the entire negotiation. You can take her number or you can watch her drive to the next woman down the block, so you take it. You climb in, and you do not yet know how big the house is, how many floors, how many windows, or what exactly she means by a little light cleaning. You will find all of that out when you get there, and not 1 minute before. The number she says is the number. There is no second number waiting behind it, no counteroffer you can make from the curb without watching the whole morning drive away in a nice coat. She says a figure, and the figure is low, and the low figure is the market working exactly as designed, because behind you is a line of women who will each take a nickel less than the last, and everyone in the car and on the curb knows it. She calls it light cleaning, and you have learned what light means. Light means she will name 3 rooms in the car and remember a 4th once you're inside. Light means the windows, which were not mentioned, and the oven, which was not mentioned, and a closet that has apparently not been mentioned to anyone since the war. Light is the lightest word in the English language, and it can lift an astonishing amount of actual weight. You sit in the back of the sedan with your bag in your lap and your good manners on, and the two of you make the small, careful talk of strangers who both understand the arrangement and will both pretend, for the length of the ride, that it is friendlier than it is. She asks if you are a hard worker. You say you are. This is like asking a river if it is wet, but you answer politely, because politeness is half of what she is paying for and the cheaper half. Here is the part that would astonish a person from any sensible century. There is no paper, no contract, no signature, no protection worth the name. The whole of your employment fits inside a sentence said through a car window, and if she decides at the end of the day that the sentence meant more than you thought, the sentence wins because she is holding the money and you are holding a bag. It is the gig before the app, all of the arrangement and none of the star rating. The car turns onto a street with trees, and the houses get further apart, and lawns appear, green, smug, and recently watered. You watch the neighbourhood improve through the window like a country you are visiting and will not be allowed to stay in. Somewhere in one of these calm houses is a mop that will meet you shortly, and a floor that has been waiting, and a whole day of another woman's life that you are about to spend cleaning up so she can go to her club. Mrs. Ellison, for that is her name, tells you the children are not to be disturbed, and the dog is friendly, and the silver is to be handled just so. She tells you these things in the tone of a woman reading rules to a new appliance. You nod at each one. You are cataloguing, the way you always catalogue, filing away which houses feed you and which houses count the spoons, because tomorrow you will stand on the corner again and the corner will want to know. The car pulls into a drive. The house is bigger than she made it sound, which you could have predicted. You gather your bag. You thank her for the ride, because you were raised right and because it costs you nothing. Then you follow her up a clean front path toward a day whose true size you are only now, standing in its shadow, beginning to guess. You are on your knees on a stranger's kitchen floor, and the day has properly begun. The bucket sits beside you, the water is already going grey, and the brush has a handle worn smooth by other women's hands. She wants the floor done first, then the bathroom, then the windows, then whatever else she thinks of while you work. You move through the house the way water moves, always downhill, into whatever needs doing next. Your own home is across the city with its beds unmade, and you will get to those tonight, when this is finished. The floor is a large one, and it has been waiting for you specifically, which is to say it has been waiting for anyone with a bag and a low enough price. You work in sections, the way you were taught, the way your mother was taught, wetting and scrubbing and wiping back toward the door so you never have to walk across the part you just did. There is a rhythm to it that your body knows without asking your mind, and your mind, freed, wanders off to its own quiet, private, and unpaid errands. The shopping, the border, the boys' shoes. The brush knows more than you do about this house. Its handle has been sanded smooth by a procession of hands before yours, women whose names she has surely forgotten, each of whom knelt exactly here and pushed exactly this brush across exactly this tile. You are the newest link in a long kneeling chain, and the brush is the only thing in the room that remembers all of you. The house makes its little demands as you go. A radiator ticks. A clock in the hall is smug about the time. The dog, friendly as promised, comes to supervise, sitting just outside your clean stripe with the expression of a small foreman who has seen better work and is too polite to say so. You tell him he is very handsome. He accepts this as his due and does not offer to help. Mrs. Ellison drifts in and out, adding rooms to the day the way a person adds items to a grocery list they are making up as they walk. Oh, and the pantry, if you have time. Oh, and the front steps. The phrase, if you have time, is doing a tremendous amount of lying, because you do not have time, you have a price. And the price was agreed for a day, and the day will simply get heavier until it either ends or you do. Your knees are the first to file a complaint. The tile is hard and cold, and it presses its grievance straight up through the thin cotton of your house dress, and by the second room your knees have organized into a small union and are threatening to strike. You shift your weight. You fold a rag under them, a trick the corner taught you, and you keep going, because a union of two knees has no leverage against a floor that must be finished. The strange math of the work sits oddly in your chest. You are making this house beautiful, and it will never be yours, not the floor, not the light coming clean through the windows you are about to do, not one warm inch of it. You are pouring your morning into a shine that another woman will walk across in her stockings tonight without a single thought. The work disappears into its own result. That is what makes it invisible, and being invisible is most of why it pays what it pays. You sit back on your heels for one honest second and look at the floor, which is gleaming now, dark and wet and perfect, holding the window light like a still pond. It is genuinely lovely. You did that. Then you dip the brush, and you slide the bucket forward, and you start on the next stretch, because the floor is only the first thing on a list she is still, somewhere in the house, cheerfully adding to. You are leaning out of a fourth-floor window with a rag in one hand and the sill in the other, cleaning the outside of the glass. This is treated as a perfectly normal request. The woman who hired you wants the windows bright on both sides, and the only way to reach the outside is to sit on the ledge and lean into the open air above the street. There is no harness, no rule, and no one who would owe you anything if you slipped. If you fell, you were not, in the eyes of the law, quite an employee at all. The sill is granite, cold under your palm, and it holds your whole weight and your whole future while you work. You have found the trick of it over the years, the way you find the trick of everything. You hook one arm inside, you keep 3 points of contact like a careful animal, and you swing the rag in long arcs across a pane that is really just a thin, cold sheet between you and a very direct conversation with the pavement. Below you, the street goes about its morning, small, busy, and completely unaware. A milk truck, a man with a newspaper folded under his arm, 2 boys who should be in school. None of them look up, because a woman washing a high window is one of those things a city has decided not to see, filed away with pigeons and steam and the other machinery that makes a neighbourhood run without appearing to. Mrs. Ellison put her head in earlier and said, brightly, that the last girl did the outside so beautifully, which is the kind of sentence that is not a compliment at all, but an instruction wearing a compliment's coat. So here you are, on the ledge, doing the outsides beautifully, because the last girl did and the next girl will, and the window does not care which of you it is holding out over the drop. Here is the thing about your job that would stop a modern person cold. If the sill crumbled, if your foot slipped on the wet stone, if the whole arrangement of arm and hip and prayer came undone, there was no insurance behind you, no compensation, no employer to be found responsible, because the law had quietly decided that a woman like you was not legally covered. You could work 100 houses and fall out of the 100th and land, in every sense, on your own. You do not think about this while you are out here. You cannot afford to, in the most literal way. You think instead about the glass, about the streak in the corner, about the pleasant fact that the pane is going clear under your rag and the morning light is coming through it cleaner than it did an hour ago. The mind, given a ledge and a job, learns to look only at the job. There is even a strange, thin pleasure in it which you would not admit to anyone. Up here, the noise of the house falls away. The children, the demands, the endless list, all of it is on the other side of the glass, and for a few minutes it is just you and the air, and a simple task with a visible result. You are terrified and you are peaceful at the same time, which is a combination this life has taught you to hold without dropping either one. You finish the pain and slide back inside, and your knees do a small, betrayed wobble as they take your weight on honest floor again. You look at the window. It is perfect, invisible, so clean it seems to have been removed entirely, and Mrs. Ellison will look through it tonight at her garden and think of nothing at all, which is exactly the result you were hired to produce. You gather the rag, you move to the next window, and you climb back out over the street, because there are 3 more, and the day is not paying by the pain. You spend the afternoon bent over tubs of hot water, washing another family's heaviest things. The blankets, the furniture covers, the winter coats, all of it goes into the steam, and all of it fights you, sodden and enormous, when you try to lift it out. Your hands have been in water since noon. The soap is harsh, the steam fogs the little window over the sink, and your back has opinions it did not have this morning. This is the part of the work that never photographs well, which is why no one who imagines this decade ever pictures it at all. A wet wool blanket is one of the heaviest objects in ordinary life, and nobody warns you about this until you are the one lifting it. Dry, it is a blanket. Wet, it is a drowned sheep with grievances, and it clings to the bottom of the tub and refuses to be born, and you haul it up hand over hand while the grey water sheets off it and back into the tub, generously all over you. The steam is its own country, and you have lived there many afternoons. It fogs the window, it beads on the walls, it curls your hair into a shape you did not request, and it fills your chest with the wet, soapy, slightly scorched smell of other people's cleanliness. It is warm at least. On a cold day, the laundry is the one warm room in the world, which is the closest thing to a benefit this job provides. Mrs. Ellison keeps a washing machine, a fine one, gleaming in the corner like a promise. You are not, it turns out, to use it for these. The machine is for the delicate things and the everyday things and the heavy things, the coats and the covers and the winter blankets are for hands, for tubs, for you, because that is what hands are cheaper than. So the beautiful machine hums through a load of pillowcases while you fight a coat roughly the size of a mattress 3 feet away, and neither of you comments on the arrangement. The washboard is a medieval instrument, and you play it like one, scrubbing the collar and the cuffs and the hems where the dirt hides against the ridged glass until your knuckles have their own opinion about the whole enterprise. Up and down, ring and turn. Your arms have done this so many thousand times that they do it without you now, the way a piano player's fingers keep going while the mind steps out for air. Here is the truth the steam knows and the magazine does not. There is no clean version of clean. Somebody's hands make it happen, and the hands are always wet, and always somebody's, and the whiter and softer the finished linen, the harder and redder the hands that got it there. You are the hidden step between dirty and lovely, and the lovely gets photographed, and the step does not. Your own family's wash is waiting at home, a whole other mountain, saved for Sunday because there are only so many afternoons, and you spend most of them like this, in someone else's steam, over someone else's coats. There is a grim little joke in it that you turn over sometimes. You wash the whole city and go home to a hamper of your own, the cobbler's children and so on. By 4 o'clock the heavy things are done, wrung as dry as human arms can wring them, and hung to drip in the yard where they will freeze half solid before they ever think about drying. Your dress is soaked to the waist. Your hands are white, wrinkled and slightly numb, the way they get, the way they stay for an hour after. You empty the last tub, grey and cooling, and you watch the water spiral away carrying an afternoon of your one wild life down a stranger's drain. Then you dry your ruined hands on your apron, and you go to find out what else is on the list. You are paid at the door, in cash, out of a purse, and the amount is whatever was agreed at the curb this morning. Sometimes it is $1. Sometimes it is a little more, sometimes a little less than you understood, and there is no slip, no record, and no one you can ask about the difference. You worked a full day inside the machinery of another household, and outside that door you are covered by nothing at all. No minimum wage, no limit on the hours, no help if the ledge had given way. You fold the money into your bag and start the long way home. The purse comes out at the end like the last small ceremony of the day. Mrs. Ellison opens it in the front hall, not the kitchen, so that money never quite touches the room where the work happened, and she counts the bills into your palm with the mild efficiency of a woman settling a small account. She thanks you. She means it, in her way. She is brisk, pleasant, and entirely untroubled. She has no idea, and no reason to acquire one, that the number in your hand is the whole reason your children eat this week. You count it later, on the trolley, discreetly. Sometimes it matches the morning's promise. Sometimes it is quietly shrunk by the time it reached the hall, $1 becoming 90 cents through some accounting that happened entirely inside her head, and there is nothing to be done. Because the agreement was a sentence through a car window, and sentences do not hold up in a court you are not allowed to reach. The invisible architecture of it would astonish anyone who thinks the modern minimum wage has always existed. The laws that protect workers were written with a door in them, and the door was you. Domestic work was left out on purpose, cut clean from the wage laws and the hour laws and the insurance, so that a woman on her knees in a kitchen was, legally, barely a worker at all. You are the gig worker before the app. All of the labour and none of the protection, and no rating to leave when the pay comes up short. So the pay is whatever it is, and you take whatever it is, because the corner tomorrow will offer the same terms, and the rent will make the same demand, and the space between those two facts is the exact size of your life. You do not weep about it. Weeping is for people with time. You fold the money small, you tuck it into the inside pocket, you sewed yourself for exactly this, and you button your coat over the day's whole wage like a woman guarding a coal. The walk to the trolley is long, and your body files the afternoon's bills as you go. The knees. The back. The white wrinkled hands slowly coming back to themselves in the cold. You pass other women walking the same direction with the same weary gait and the same paper bags, a whole quiet exodus out of the good neighbourhoods at day's end, going home to the neighbourhoods the good neighbourhoods never visit. You think about the number in your pocket, and you do the arithmetic that never stops running behind your eyes. This much toward the rent, this much toward the little book, this much, if the week is kind, toward the shoes. The day is converted, right there on the sidewalk, from aching into arithmetic, which is the only alchemy this life reliably performs. The trolley comes, and you get on, and you sit down for the first time in 9 hours, and your whole body sends up a single grateful sigh that has nothing to do with rest and everything to do with weight coming off feet. Home is still 40 minutes and a second job away. But the wage is in your pocket, buttoned safe, warm against your chest, and for the length of one trolley ride you let yourself simply hold it, and be, for a moment, a woman who was paid today. You come home to your own kitchen and start your second job, which is other people's laundry. There are bundles by the door, each tied with string, each belonging to a family down the street that pays you to wash and dry and press what they would rather not. Your children are asleep, or very nearly. You fill the tub again, the same way you filled it all afternoon, and you begin. The one difference is that this water is yours, in your home, and the coins for it will be yours too, which is the single reason your eyes are still open. There is a cruelty in the symmetry that you try not to look at too directly. You spent the day with your arms in one woman's wash, and you will spend the evening with your arms in 3 more, and the only thing that changes is the address. The tub does not know it is a different tub. Your hands certainly do not. The bundles have personalities, and you have come to know them the way a shepherd knows a flock. The Petrocellis send everything, sheets and shirts and a tablecloth with a hopeful red stain that has defeated better women than you. Old Mr. Grady sends exactly 4 shirts and a handkerchief and pays on time, which makes him practically royalty. Each bundle is a small contract, a few coins, a promise to have it back by such a day, ironed, folded, better than it came. You work by the light over the sink so the rest of the house stays dark and asleep. The water goes in, the soap goes in, the harsh yellow bar you shave down with a knife to make it last. And your hands, which have every right to mutiny, go in after them, because a mutiny does not press the Petrocellis' sheets, and the Petrocellis' coins are already spoken for by the coal man. This is the sweetest sum you know, the one that keeps you upright at this hour. This wash is yours. Nobody hired you from a car window, nobody counts you into a hall and shorts you a dime, nobody owns the result but you. You set the price, the neighbours pay it, and every coin lands in your own tin with your own name silently written on it, and that small sovereignty is worth an hour of sleep you will not get back. The iron comes out last, heated on the stove, heavy as a grudge, and you press the shirts while the tub drains behind you. There is a rhythm to it that is almost restful if you are tired enough, and you are always tired enough. hiss and glide, fold and stack. The pile of finished work grows on the clean cloth, crisp, warm, and smelling faintly of scorch, and it is, you will admit, satisfying, the way a made bed is satisfying. A small, visible order pressed into a day that had very little of it. Your daughter appears in the doorway, woken by the light or the quiet clink of the iron, and stands there rubbing one eye, a small ghost in a borrowed nightgown. You send her back to bed with a word and a look, and she goes, but she has seen it, the way children see everything, filing away for some later decade, the picture of her mother pressing strangers' shirts at midnight. You hope she remembers it kindly. You suspect she will remember it accurately, which is not always the same thing. By the time the last shirt is folded, the house is deep in the middle of the night, and the only sound is the tick of the cooling iron. You bank the stove. You wash your hands one final time in water that has held 4 families today. Then you look at the neat warm pile that is tomorrow's coins, and you let yourself feel, under the exhaustion, a flat and stubborn pride, before you turn off the light and go, at last, to lie down beside the day that starts again in 4 hours. You rent your spare room to a boarder, which means your small apartment is now also a small hotel that you run entirely by yourself. There is a man named Mr. Pruitt in the back room who pays you weekly for the bed and the meals, and in exchange you cook for one more, wash for one more, and keep the front room quiet while he sleeps off his shift. The room brings in money you badly need. It also means you are never quite off duty in your own home, because the hotel, small as it is, never fully closes for the night. Mr. Pruitt works nights at the yards, which sounds convenient and mostly is, except that his day is your night, so the apartment runs 2 shifts now, with you the only worker on both. He comes in as the children go out. He sleeps while you cook. He rises, grey, rumpled, and smelling faintly of coal smoke, just as you are trying to get 4 children into bed, and he wants his supper, which is your breakfast, and the whole household clock develops a small permanent limp. He is not a bad man, which is the best you can say of any arrangement like this, and more than you can say of some. He takes off his boots at the door. He keeps to his room. He calls you Mrs. and means it, and he pays on Fridays without being asked, which places him among the natural aristocracy of people who simply do the thing they said they would. The room used to be something else, before the math. It was going to be the boys' room, or the sewing room, or just a room, an actual empty room, the kind of luxury you have heard exists in other houses. Now it is revenue. Every room in a working household is eventually asked what it earns, and the ones that cannot answer are converted, and so a family of 5 lives in the space of 4 and calls the difference income. A quiet sleight of hand makes it possible at all. On paper, taking in a boarder is not a job. It appears in no census, on no pay slip, in no count of working women, and yet it is cooking, cleaning, laundering, and hotel management performed for a wage, invisibly, by a woman the country insists is at home doing nothing. You have 3 jobs, and the government can see one of them, and it is not even sure about that one. The meals are the heaviest part. You were already cooking for a crowd, and now the crowd has a paying member with expectations, and a boarder who feels shortchanged will find another missus with a fuller pot. You stretch the stew. You add the potato. You perform small daily miracles of multiplication over a single burner, feeding 6 on the groceries of 4 and making it look, if not lavish, at least like nobody was counting. There is a strange intimacy in it that nobody talks about. A stranger sleeps 12 feet from your children, eats your cooking, hears your marriage through the wall on its bad nights and its good ones, and becomes, without anyone deciding it, a sort of furniture with opinions, a fixture you feed. You know how he takes his coffee. He knows to be quiet past 9. You are not friends and not family, but something the language does not have a word for, 2 people the rent has bolted loosely together. At night, when the children are down and Mr. Pruitt has gone off to the yards and the apartment is, for 1 hour, empty of everyone's needs but your own, you sit in the kitchen that is also a hotel lobby and a laundry and a nursery, and you think no grand thoughts about it. You think, the rent is made this week. You think, the room earned its keep. Then you bank the stove for the boarder's late return, because the hotel, small as it is, never fully closes, and you are the whole of the night staff. You sit at the kitchen table after the dishes are done, under the one good light, sewing collars onto shirts you will never once wear. You are paid by the piece, a few cents for each finished one, by a man who drops a bundle every Monday and collects it every Friday. The faster your hands go, the more the week is worth, so your hands do not stop while you talk, while you listen for the children, while you plan tomorrow in your head. The pile on the left shrinks, the pile on the right grows, and that quiet trade is the whole evening. The work is piecework, which is a plain word for a clever trap. You are not paid for your time, which would be dignified and predictable. You are paid for your output, which means the machine setting the pace is you, and a person will drive herself harder than any foreman would ever dare, because the foreman is inside her now, and he is worried about the rent. 3 cents a collar. You convert your own tiredness into a rate per hour that you try very hard not to finish calculating. The man who brings the bundles is called Mr. Abramowitz, and he is neither kind nor cruel, only precise. He counts the finished pieces on your table with a moistened thumb, quick as a teller, and he pays exactly what was earned and not 1 cent of encouragement, and he inspects a collar now and then, holding it to the light for the crooked seam that lets him pay nothing for the piece. You learn to sew straight the first time, taught without a word by the one bad collar he found in 40 and set aside. Your hands have become very good at this, frighteningly good, in a way that has cost you something to become. They move on their own while your mind goes elsewhere, and you can sew a collar and worry about a fever, and half listen to a radio program all at once. 3 tasks braided into one lamplit evening. It should feel like skill. Mostly, it feels like a piano that has forgotten it was ever anything but a machine for making the correct sound. The modern shape of it has not changed a bit. The work comes to your home, which sounds like freedom and is sold as freedom. And the freedom turns out to be the freedom to be at your job every waking minute. You are also at your life. There is no clocking out of a kitchen. The bundle sits there, patient, reproachful, and every hour you are not sewing it is an hour you can feel yourself not earning, so you sew through the evening, through the tiredness, through the part of the night a wiser century would give to rest. The light over the table is the only light in the house now, a small yellow island, and you go up and down the collar with a needle worn smooth. Moths find the window, the clock finds midnight. A child turns over and sighs in its sleep, and you glance up and keep sewing, because the right-hand pile is not yet tall enough to sleep on. You think, sometimes, about the men who will wear these shirts. Somewhere a man will button one of your collars tomorrow, knot a tie over it, and go be important in a building, never once wondering whose hand set the seam, at what hour, for what wage. Your labour rides out into the world invisibly stitched into his mourning. That is the whole nature of it. You are everywhere on him and nowhere in the story. At last the left-hand pile is gone, and the right-hand pile is a small tidy fortune of 3-cent pieces, and you tie it back into its bundle for Mr. Abramowitz and his moistened thumb. You turn off the good light and sit in the dark 1 more minute, flexing the cramp out of your right hand, before you go to bed, having earned, tonight, roughly the price of tomorrow's milk. You hand the children to your husband at the door as he comes off his shift, and you go straight on to yours. This is the arrangement that lets you both earn and still keep one parent in the house. He takes the day, you take the evening and the night. You kiss the baby, you catch the trolley or you walk, and you clock in at the mill just as the light goes out of the sky. Somewhere behind you, dinner is being managed without you for once. Ahead of you is a loom, a lint-thick room, and 8 hours on your feet. The handoff happens on the front step, and it lasts about 20 seconds, which is the amount of marriage this schedule allots you on a working day. He arrives tired. You leave tired. You trade a sleeping baby and a few urgent facts. The fever, the note from the school, the pot on the stove, like 2 tired, careful, and sleepless runners passing a baton neither of them has had time to look at. Then he is inside and you are gone, and the door closes on the one moment all day the family was fully staffed. It is a good arrangement, as these things go, and you both know it, which is why neither of you complains. Plenty of women would trade for it. A child watched by its own father instead of a key on a string is a small daily luxury, and you have learned to be grateful for luxuries that are really just the absence of something worse. Still, there is a cost, and it is a quiet one, and it lives in the part of the calendar where the two of you are supposed to be. You are married to a man you mostly wave at. He is a shape leaving as you arrive, a warmth on the other side of the bed that is already empty when you reach it, a voice you hear more often through the wall than across a table. The marriage is real. It is simply conducted, most days, by relay. The walk to the mill is when you become the other woman, the working one, the one with a number on a card and a place on a line. You feel the change happen somewhere around the third block, the mother folding herself down small and the mill hand standing up in her place. And by the gate you are all business, your hair tied back, your mind already reaching for the rhythm of the machines. The evening shift has its own population, and you know them now. There is Franny, who works the frame beside yours and can say an entire paragraph with her eyebrows over the noise. There is the foreman, who is fair on Tuesdays and unknowable the rest of the week. There is the whole night crew, the people who keep the country in cloth while it sleeps, a shift the daytime world benefits from constantly and thinks about never. You clock in. The card goes into the slot, the machine stamps the time with a sound like a small door shutting, and just like that the mill owns your next 8 hours and will account for them to the minute. It is almost restful, in its way, to be somewhere your time is measured and paid, after a day of labour that no clock ever counted. The mill, whatever else it is, at least admits that you are working. The floor is loud already, warm already, thick with the smell of oil and cotton and the day's leftover heat. You take your place at the frame. Franny lifts her chin in greeting. You lift yours back. And then the shift begins, and there is no more room for the mother or the wife or the woman on the trolley. Only the loom and the thread and the 8 hours, standing between you and a morning you will spend asleep while everyone you love is awake. You stand at your machines on the night shift while most of the city sleeps, and the noise is so complete that it turns into a kind of silence. The looms roar, the floor trembles under your shoes. Lint hangs in the air and settles on your hair, your arms, your lungs, and you learn to read lips and hand signs, because no ordinary voice carries in here. You tie broken threads faster than you can think about tying them. The hours do not so much pass as accumulate, and you keep your eyes down on the work, because the work will not wait for you to be tired. The sound is the first thing that owns you here. It is not a noise you hear so much as a weather you stand inside, a solid wall of clatter and thrum that presses on your ears until, strangely, it becomes a hush, a roaring so total that your mind gives up on it and files it under quiet. The new girls flinch for a week, then their ears surrender, the way yours did, and the roar becomes the ordinary background of the night, as unremarkable as your own heartbeat. The lint is the second thing. It drifts off the cotton in a fine white weather of its own, and it settles on everything, on the machines, on the floor, on your eyelashes, in the small hairs of your nose, and, though nobody says so and no sign warns you, in your chest. You breathe the mill. You take a little of it home each night in your lungs, a slow, soft snow that never melts, and the older women's coughs are the sound of the account eventually coming due. You tend 3 frames, or 4, walking the aisle between them like a shepherd of thread, watching for the break. A thread snaps somewhere in the roar and your eye catches it before your mind does, and your fingers are already there, pinching, twisting, and knotting the ends back together in a motion so worn into you that you could do it asleep, and some nights you nearly are. The frame never thanks you. It simply keeps running, which is the mill's entire idea of gratitude. Talk happens in a language the noise permits. Franny, 2 frames down, can hold a whole conversation in eyebrows and chin lifts and the particular way she rolls her eyes at the foreman's back, and you answer in kind. An entire friendship conducted in pantomime across a river of sound. You've shared news of a birth this way, and a death, and a very good piece of gossip about the second floor, all of it mimed over the machines, none of it spoken aloud. Time behaves oddly on the night shift. There is no window that means anything, no daylight moving across a floor to tell you the afternoon is fading. There is only the clock on the far wall, which you refuse to look at because looking makes it slow, and the slow accumulation of tied threads and finished bobbins, hour stacking on hour like the lint stacking on the sill. You are not spending the night, you are assembling it, piece by piece, until it is finally, mercifully whole. Around 3 in the deep of it, the body files its real complaint. The feet first, then the back, then a strange floating tiredness behind the eyes that is not sleep and cannot be argued with, only outlasted. You shift your weight, you blink hard. You think about the children asleep across town and the bed you will fall into after they have gone to school, and you tie another thread, and another, walking your little aisle in the roaring hush while the country sleeps under the cloth you are, thread by thread, still making. You work the counter and the tables at a diner where your real wage is decided, cup, by strangers. The base pay is almost an insult, so what you actually take home is the tips, which means every plate is a small performance and every rude table is money straight out of your pocket. You are quick, you are pleasant, you remember exactly who wanted their eggs how, and you carry 4 plates up one arm because a second trip is a tip lost. Your feet are finished by noon. The real lunch rush has not even started yet. The wage on paper is a joke everyone at the diner is in on. The owner pays you a number so small it would be insulting if it were meant seriously, and it is not meant seriously, because everyone understands that your real employer is not the man behind the register but the shifting, unpredictable, coin-dropping public that comes through the door. You do not work for the diner. You work for whoever is sitting in your section, and they set your wages 1 dime at a time. This makes every table a tiny economy you must charm. The trucker at the counter, the 2 clerks splitting a check to the penny, the family with the child who has strong feelings about the placement of the ketchup, each of them holds a small verdict in a pocket, and your job is to earn it without ever appearing to be earning it, to be warm, quick, and unbothered while performing rapid math about which table tips and which table stiffs. It is acting. It is acting for money, in an apron, on ruined feet. Your feet are the honest ledger of the job. Concrete under a thin floor, 10 hours of it, back and forth from counter to kitchen to table to register in a route you could run blind and mostly do. By noon they are 2 hot complaints in sensible shoes, and by close they have stopped complaining and gone somewhere quieter and more worrying, and you will soak them tonight in a basin and they will forgive you by morning. Mostly enough. You have learned the whole silent science of tips, because your rent depends on it. Refill the coffee before he asks. Call the regular by name. Laugh, once, genuinely, at the joke you have heard 400 times, because the 401st teller does not know he is not the first and tips accordingly. Smile through the man who snaps his fingers like you are a dog, because the finger snapper occasionally tips well and dignity, sadly, is not legal tender at the grocer. The plates are their own athletics. You learned early to stack them up your left arm, 2, 3, 4, a hot ceramic architecture balanced on bone and nerve, because 2 trips to the kitchen is 1 table left waiting, and a waiting table is a shrinking tip. Your arm has a burn on it, a small pale history of a plate that came straight off the grill, and you barely felt it at the time, because a burn you can feel later and a tip you must earn now. There is a strange freedom in it, under the ache, that the day work never had. Here the money is at least partly yours to earn, minute by minute, table by table. A good day, a generous crowd, a lunch rush that breaks your way, and you walk out with a pocket of coins that is genuinely more than the paper wage promised, and that small victory is yours, wrung out of your own speed and charm and aching feet. Then you count it in the alley, and you tie your shoes tighter, and you go back in, because the real rush has not even started yet. You take the cannery work when the season comes, because when it comes all at once. For a few weeks the fruit or the fish arrives faster than any human hands could keep up with, and the line runs 14 and 16 hours a day for as long as it lasts. You stand at the belt, you cut, you pack, and you do not look up. Your hands keep moving in the cold and the wet until they no longer quite feel like your hands. Then, as suddenly as it started, the season ends, the line stops, and the work is simply not there. The season does not negotiate. The harvest comes in when the harvest comes in, and the fruit will not wait for your feet or your sleep, or the fact that you are also a mother. And so for those few weeks your entire life is loaded onto the belt and run past you at a speed set by a crop. You go in when it is dark, you come out when it is dark. In between there is only the belt, endless, gleaming, indifferent, delivering more of the same thing forever. The line has a pace, and the pace is not yours. It is set somewhere up the belt by a person you never see, and it is set fast, always a hair faster than comfortable, because a belt that runs a little too fast for everyone gets a little more out of everyone, and that thin margin of extra, multiplied by 100 aching women, is where the profit lives. You match it. You have no choice but to match it. Falling behind is not a mistake the belt forgives. Your hands stop being hands somewhere in the second week. The cold water, the wet fruit, the repeated cut and pack and reach, and they go numb, pink, and slightly unfamiliar, obeying you from a small distance, like tools you are operating by remote rather than parts of your own body. You watch them work as if they belong to someone else, a competent stranger doing something monotonous at the end of your arms, and you are almost grateful for the numbness, because numb hands do not send up complaints. The women beside you are the whole reason it is bearable. You do not know most of their names, and you know all of their rhythms, the way the line makes a temporary family of whoever is standing on it, and someone always starts a song or a piece of gossip that travels down the belt person to person, a small human warmth moving against the machine's cold current. You take up the tune. It does not slow the work. It only makes the work briefly feel like something people are doing together rather than something being done to them. The cruelty built into the cannery follows you home. The money is real and the money is good, better than most weeks, a genuine fat little run of wages that you desperately need. And then it ends. The last crate goes by, the belt shudders to a stop, the sudden silence rings in your ears, and the work that owned every hour of you for 3 weeks simply evaporates, leaving you with spent hands, a small stack of cash, and nothing at all lined up for next week. So you save what you can from the fat weeks against the thin ones, the way a squirrel who has read a great deal of economics might, because you have learned that abundance in this life is always a season and never a settlement. You cash the final envelope, you flex your slowly returning hands, and you carry the money home carefully, knowing it has to stretch across the long quiet stretch until the next thing ripens and the belt starts up again and calls you back to stand in the cold and feed it. You clean the wards at night, when the hospital has gone quiet and the work has not. You push the mop down long shining corridors. You empty whatever needs emptying, and you scrub the rooms the day shift left behind. The patients sleep, or fail to, and you learn to move through the dim without waking them. It is steady work, indoor work, work with a real employer and a real paycheck, which quietly makes it better than the corner. It is also the graveyard shift, so you are cleaning up the day while your own children sleep clear across town without you. The hospital at night is a different country from the hospital by day. The doctors are gone, the visitors are gone, the bustle has drained out of the halls, and what is left is the quiet machinery of keeping the sick alive until morning. A night nurse at her pool of lamplight, a cart wheeling somewhere out of sight, and you, moving the mop in long, slow arcs down a corridor that gleams like a wet street after rain. You have a real job here, and after the corner you do not take that lightly. There is a name on a schedule. There is a paycheck with the hospital's stern blue letterhead, small but certain, arriving on the same day every week, whether the mopping went well or badly. There is even, technically, a limit to the hours, which after the cannery feels like a strange and unfamiliar kindness. You are, for the first time in a while, an actual employee, and the word sits oddly and pleasantly on you. The work itself is not gentle, whatever its dignity. You clean what bodies do when they are ill, the things the daytime world would faint to look at, and the night world simply wipes up and moves past. You mop the room after the bad hour. You carry away what must be carried. You have a strong stomach now, stronger than you ever asked for, because a person cleaning a hospital at night learns quickly that squeamishness is a luxury for people who do not have to be here. The patients are your quiet companions, though few of them ever know your name. An old man who cannot sleep watches you work and lifts a hand in greeting, and you nod back. 2 people awake in a sleeping building, keeping each other faint company across the dark. A child down the ward whimpers, and a nurse goes to it, and you mop a little more softly near that door, because there is a way to push a mop that says I am being quiet for you, and you have learnt it. But the cost lies, as it always lives, in the tally of where you are not. You are being kind, quiet, and careful with strangers' children in the small hours, and your own children are asleep in a dark apartment across the city with a neighbour half listening through a wall. You tend the sick of the whole ward at night and cannot tend a bad dream at home. The care you give is real, and the care you cannot give is also real, and they are the same care, simply spent on the wrong address by an economy that priced your presence at a wage. Toward morning the building begins, very slightly, to wake. A grey light finds the high windows, a kettle goes on somewhere. The night nurse stretches, and the first cart of the day shift rattles in, and your corridors are gleaming, ready, wiped clean of the whole long night. You sign out. You step into the raw early cold with your certain small paycheck a little closer, and you go home the wrong way through the waking city, to sleep for a few hours in a bed still warm from the children who have just left it. You spend your day inside the heat of a commercial laundry, feeding wet sheets into a machine that could take your arm if you gave it the chance. The room is a wall of steam and the smell of bleach and hot cotton, and the mangle, the great heated roller that presses the linens flat, runs all day and slows for no one. You feed it, you catch what it gives back, you fold, you stack, you feed it again. By the afternoon your dress is soaked through and your hands are raw and pink. The linens come out perfect and pressed. You go home soaked to the skin. The heat is total and it never lets up. It comes off the boilers and the presses and the great tubs, and it fills the room floor to ceiling until the air itself feels like a wet wool blanket you are made to breathe. And by mid-morning your dress has surrendered and clings to you, and your hair has given up any ambition it ever had. In winter the room could rent itself out as a furnace, and the men outside envy you the warmth. They should come stand in it for an hour. They would revise the envy. The mangle is the beast of the room, and everyone respects it the way you respect a large animal that means you no harm but has no imagination about your fingers. It is a pair of enormous heated rollers, and you feed the damp sheets in at one end, straight, fast, and square, and it swallows them and presses them and hands them back at the far side hot and flat and perfect. Feed it crooked and it eats the wrinkle right into the cloth. Feed it careless and it will happily accept a sleeve, a cuff, a hand, with the same patient roll. So you feed it correctly, 10,000 times a day, because the alternative is a story the older women tell in low voices about a girl and a glove and a lesson nobody wanted taught. Your hands learn the exact edge of the danger and dance right along it all day, quick and sure and never quite touching the rollers, a small ballet of not being maimed that you perform without applause or hazard pay. Your hands pay the daily toll even when they stay whole. The heat and the bleach and the endless wet turn them raw and pink and tender, the skin gone soft and papery from hours of steam, and they sting in the cold on the walk home the way a scald stings, a small burning reminder of where they spent the day. You rub them with lard at night, the way your mother did, and it helps a little, and in the morning you put them back into the steam. The finished linens are genuinely beautiful, which is the small cruel joke of it. They come off the mangle in warm flat stacks, crisp and white and smelling of clean, bound for the good hotels and the good hospitals and the homes of people who will lie down on them tonight without a single thought of the room they were pressed in. You made that. Your raw pink hands made that snowy perfect stack. Nobody sleeping on it will ever know your name, and that anonymity is stitched into the price. At the whistle you peel yourself out of the heat and into the cold, and the change is violent, the sweat freezing on you before you reach the corner, your soaked dress turning to a chill you carry all the way home. You are cooked and clammy at once, wrung out like the sheets, and you walk fast to stay warm, thinking of nothing grander than dry clothes and a chair. Behind you the mangle is still turning, still hungry, still perfectly happy to run all night for whoever feeds it next. You solve the same problem every working mother solves before she can earn a single cent. Who watches the children? This morning the answer is your own mother, who is old and willing. Some mornings it is the woman 2 doors down, and you take hers on Sunday to keep it even. There is no daycare, no nursery, no arrangement the city offers you. There is only a patchwork of grandmothers and neighbours and traded favours, held together by nothing sturdier than trust, and if one piece falls out on a Tuesday, then you have no work at all that Tuesday. The system, if you can dignify it with the word, is a quilt made entirely of other tired, generous and overstretched women. Your mother takes the baby 3 days. Mrs. Ruiz down the hall takes all the little ones on the days you take all of hers. The widow on the second floor will watch a child for a coin or a favour or a jar of what you put up in the fall, and between the 3 of them, patched together fresh each week, you assemble something that almost holds. It is unpaid, mostly, or paid in kind, in the old currency of women who have no money but have each other. You do not hand your mother a wage. You hand her your Saturday, your mending, your turn with her landlord's paperwork that she cannot read. The whole arrangement runs on a ledger no bank would recognise, debts and credits of time and casseroles and standing in a line at the relief office on somebody else's behalf, all of it balanced by memory and none of it written down. The trouble with a quilt is that it comes apart at the seams, and the seams are old women and busy women who have troubles of their own. Your mother's hip goes bad. Mrs. Ruiz gets a day shift of her own and can no longer take the mornings. The widow's son sends for her at last, and just like that a corner of the quilt is gone, and you are up at midnight sewing the whole thing back together, because a mother without childcare is a mother without wages, and the 2 facts are welded together at the hip. The next part would puzzle a person from a saner arrangement of society. There is nothing else. No program, no subsidy, no place a working mother can simply take her child in the morning and reclaim it at night, the way you might check a coat. The country that put the woman to work forgot, or declined, to ask the obvious next question. And so the question landed where such questions always land, on the women themselves, to solve privately, for free, in the dark, out of nothing but each other. You lie awake some nights doing the childcare arithmetic instead of the money kind, which is somehow worse. If Monday is mother and Tuesday is Mrs. Ruiz and Wednesday the school has the little ones till 3 but not the baby, then Wednesday has a hole in it the exact size of an afternoon, and the hole must be filled or the wages do not come, and you turn the days over and over like a puzzle with a missing piece that you are nonetheless expected to complete. And yet it holds, most weeks, which is the quiet miracle nobody claps for. Through nothing but the goodwill and exhaustion of a handful of women who have agreed, without ever quite saying so, to catch each other's children when they fall, the whole impossible structure stands up one more week. It is not a system. It is a promise, unwritten, unpaid, unbreakable until it breaks, and it is the only thing standing between your job and the empty kitchen where your children would otherwise be. You tie a house key to a length of string and hang it around your oldest child's neck, because that is the childcare you can actually afford. School lets out well before your shift ends, so the children will come home to a locked door and let themselves in. You leave a note beside the bread. What to eat, what not to touch, when you will be home. You go to work carrying the picture of an empty kitchen with your children inside it, and you carry that picture all day, because there is no version of this where you get to put it down. The key is the whole plan, and it is a small, shining, and desperate plan. It is brass, worn soft at the edges, and it lies against your daughter's collarbone under her dress where she cannot lose it, and it opens the one door that stands between your children and the street. You looped the string yourself and tied it twice, and you check the knot each morning like a woman inspecting a bridge, because that bit of string is, in a very real sense, the entire architecture of your afternoons. The note is your voice left behind to do the parenting you cannot be there to do. Bread and butter in the box. Do not light the stove. Do not open to strangers. Homework at the table. Baby down by the clock's long hand at 6. You write it fresh each morning, plain and short, and you leave it under the sugar bowl where it will be found, a paper mother standing watch over a kitchen the real one had to leave. The magazines will never once show you this, though it was happening in 100,000 kitchens. All across the country, at the exact hour the afternoon light goes long and gold, children were letting themselves into empty houses with keys on strings, and the country had a fond, disapproving name for them, as though naming a thing were the same as helping it. They were the children with the keys. The country found them a little sad and did nothing at all about the reason. You think about the empty kitchen at odd moments through your shift, the way you would worry a loose tooth. It is 4 o'clock, so they are home now. It is past, so the homework is or is not being done. It is 5, and has the baby been fussy, and did the note get read, and is the door locked again behind them? And you cannot know. You can only trust and mop and trust and sew and trust, threading the whole long afternoon on nothing but faith in a 9-year-old and a knot in a string. There was help once, briefly, and the memory of it makes the string feel thinner. During the war, the government opened nurseries, and for a few years a working mother had somewhere to bring her child. Then the war ended and the nurseries closed, and the children went back to the keys, and the brief experiment in a country helping its mothers folded up quietly and was not spoken of again. You remember the nursery. The string remembers nothing, so you trust the string. You have no choice but to trust the string. And mostly the string holds, mostly the children are exactly where the note told them to be, doing exactly what it said, safe behind the door you taught them to lock. But the picture never quite leaves you, the empty kitchen with the small lives moving through it unwatched, and you carry it home on the trolley every evening and only set it down when you turn your own key in the door and see, with a relief that never gets old, that everyone is accounted for and the day did not, after all, take anything from you. You put your 9-year-old in charge of the little ones because there is simply no one else to be in charge. She knows how to warm the supper, how to keep the baby away from the stairs, how to get everyone washed and into bed if you are not home in time. She is 9 years old. She is also, from the afternoon bell until the moment you walk through the door, the only adult in the house. You taught her everything she needs, and quickly because you had to, and she carries it seriously because she can see plainly that you need her to. Her name is Ruthie, and she has a quiet, careful, and unnervingly adult competence that breaks your heart a little every time you watch it. She stands on a chair to reach the pot. She portions the supper into 4 bowls with the grave fairness of a diplomat, making sure the baby's is cool and the middle one, who complains, gets the piece with the most meat, and she does it all with a small furrow of concentration that no 9-year-old should have earned yet, and she has. She runs the house on a set of rules you gave her, and she runs them like scripture. The stove is not to be lit. The soup is already warm on the back of it, and she knows to test it with a knuckle the way she has seen you do. The door stays locked. The baby does not go near the window. She recites these to the younger ones with the flat authority of a foreman, and they obey her, mostly because children can tell the difference between a rule that is a suggestion and a rule that is holding the roof up. Something sits heavy in you, under the pride. She is 9, and she is doing the work of a grown woman, and the work is aging her in a way you can watch happen. She has your worried forehead already. She counts things the way you count things, the bread, the coins, the hours until you are home, and she has learned to lie a little to the little ones to keep them calm, which is a skill you are sorry she needed and glad she has. You did not want to hand her the house. You had no one else to hand it to. The little ones adore her and resent her in the exact proportion that children reserve for whoever is in charge. She is the one who says no more bread. She is also the one who tells the story, who checks the closet for the thing in the closet, who sits on the edge of the bed until the crying stops. She is a mother in miniature, a small, warm authority in a threadbare cardigan, and she is filling a shape you cast when you walked out the door, and she is filling it far too well. You have watched, from the doorway, coming home early once, the whole small kingdom running without you, Ruthie at the stove, the middle one setting out spoons. The baby fed and content on the floor. It was a beautiful thing to see, and it put a stone in your chest, because a house that runs this smoothly without its mother is a house that has quietly taught a child to be one, and you did the teaching, and you are not sure you will ever fully forgive the math that made you. When you come in at last, she gives you the report, solemn as a night nurse. The baby ate. The middle one cried and stopped. Nobody touched the stove. And then, only then, having delivered the house safely back into your hands, she stops being the woman of the family and becomes 9 again, and climbs into your lap too big to fit there, and you hold her anyway, this child who ran your household, and you let her be, for 1 hour, exactly as young as she is. You remember when there was a nursery, and now you go looking for one that is no longer there. During the war, the government opened day nurseries so that mothers could take the jobs the country suddenly and badly needed, and for a few years the whole problem of the children had an actual answer. Then the war ended, the money stopped, and in 1946 the nurseries closed their doors for good. The mothers did not stop working. The country simply decided it no longer cared to help with the part where somebody has to watch the child while she does. You had one for a while, and you remember it the way you remember any brief kindness that was later withdrawn. It was a plain, warm and unremarkable room in a plain building with low tables and a woman named Miss Farrell who ran it, and you dropped your oldest there in the morning and collected her at night, and for those hours you worked without the stone in your chest. It cost little or nothing. It simply existed, the way a sidewalk exists, a piece of the world arranged so that a person could get where she was going. The reasoning behind it, at the time, was not kindness, and you understood that, even then, the country needed women in the plants because the men were overseas, and a woman cannot rivet a wing with a toddler on her hip. So the nurseries opened, briskly, for the war and not for you. You were a temporary solution to a temporary problem, and when the problem ended, so, on schedule, did the solution, and nobody pretended it was about the children at all. Then the men came home, and the country wanted its women back in the kitchen, and the nurseries were an embarrassment to the story it wished to tell. So they closed. Miss Farrell's plain room went dark. The low tables went wherever low tables go, and the mothers who still had to work, and there were so many of you, more every year, went home to the keys and the strings and the quilt of worn neighbours, because the door that had been briefly open was quietly and firmly shut. It would astonish a person who assumes such things only ever move forward. The country had, with its own hands, built the exact thing working mothers needed, proven it worked, and then torn it down on purpose, because it had become inconvenient to a fantasy. This was not a thing that failed to be invented. It was invented and used and taken away, which is a different and more bitter kind of absence than never having had it at all. So now you improvise, the way all the mothers improvise, and you carry a small private grievance you rarely say out loud. You are not asking for the moon. You are asking for the plain room and the low tables and Miss Farrell, a thing that existed in your own lifetime, within recent memory, and was found too generous for peacetime. The nursery is not a dream of some better future. It is a memory of a slightly better past which is somehow harder to bear. You walk past the building, sometimes on your way to the trolley, the one that held the nursery, and it is offices now, or apartments, or nothing in particular, and it gives no sign of what it briefly was. You do not stop. There is no time to stop, and no use in it, and a woman with a shift to make cannot afford to stand on a sidewalk mourning a room. But you glance up, some mornings, at the window that used to be Miss Farrell's, and you feel the old thin ache of a door that was open once and could be opened still, if anyone with the keys had wished it. You open the pay envelope on Friday, and you watch the money leave almost as fast as it arrived. The rent takes the first and largest bite. The payment book takes its dollar. The grocer, the coal man, the shoes, the doctor you keep putting off, each one takes its piece, and you move the bills into little stacks on the table, one stack for each mouth you feed. Whatever is left over, if anything at all is left over, is the whole margin you get to live on. Most weeks that margin is thin enough to read a newspaper through. The envelope is a brief and beautiful thing while it lasts, which is about 4 minutes. There is a real pleasure in the weight of it, sealed, full, and honestly earned. The proof that a week of aching feet converted into something you can hold, and you let yourself feel that pleasure honestly for the length of time it takes to walk from the counter to the table. Then you open it, and the disassembly begins, and the envelope teaches you its weekly lesson, which is that money you have earned and money you get to keep are two entirely different animals. You pay in an order fixed as liturgy, because you have learned which creditors bite, rent first, always, into its sacred separate fold. The little book's second, before Mr. Dooley can make his soft apologetic mark. Then the grocer, who has carried you on a tab all week and must be squared before he stops carrying you, and the coal man, and the endlessly deferred doctor, each one lifting a corner of the envelope until the envelope is a memory and the table is a small city of stacks. One per obligation, none of them yours. The modern shape of it has not changed a whisker. Your money is spoken for before it reaches your hand. It arrives already promised, already owed, a river that flows through your fingers on its way to other people's pockets, and you are less its owner than its brief custodian, a toll booth the wages pass through on their way out of your life. You do not spend your pay. You distribute it, like a woman handing out coats at a fire, keeping none for herself. The margin, when there is one, is the whole game. It is the few coins left standing on the table after the city of stacks has been swept into its various envelopes and jars, and it is the difference between a week you survive and a week that costs you something you cannot get back. A good margin buys shoes. A thin margin buys nothing and simply sits there, a small, hopeful buffer against the next thing to go wrong, which will go wrong, because something always does, and the margin exists precisely so that you can meet it without going under. You are, whether anyone calls you it or not, the household's chief financial officer, its treasurer, and its comptroller, and its lender of last resort, running an enterprise on a margin that would terrify a real bank. You do it in your head, at a kitchen table, on a Friday, with a pencil and a jar and no training but need. There are men downtown with degrees who could not do what you do with what you have, and none of them will ever know your name, and your reward for solvency is the chance to do it all again next Friday. When the stacks are gone and the folds are hidden in their places and the margin, thin or thinner, is tucked into the jar, you fold the empty envelope flat and slip it into the drawer, because a good envelope can be used again and you waste nothing, least of all paper that once held money. Then you sit for a moment with the accounts closed and the week, against the odds, once more made to balance. You are broke. You are also, technically, solvent. In this house, those have long since become the same triumphant thing. You make the rent first, before food, before anything, because the rent is the one bill with the power to put you out on the street. The landlord comes on the first, or sends a man who does, and he is not the least bit interested in your week, your husband's hours, or the fact that the cannery closed early this year. He wants the number written on the paper, so you keep the rent in a separate fold, sacred and untouchable, even in a week when keeping it means the supper on the table gets noticeably thinner. The rent fold lives apart from all the other money, in the flour tin or pinned inside a coat, because money that touches other money has a way of getting spent, and this money is separate, sacred, and untouchable. You built the habit years ago after one bad month taught it to you, and now the rent is set aside the very hour the wages come in, before the grocer, before the shoes, before your own aching wish for a single small thing that is only for you. It goes into the fold, and the fold goes into hiding, and the matter is closed. The landlord is a man named Mr. Szczepanski, and he is not cruel, exactly, only absolute. He owns the roof, and the roof is the thing you cannot live without, and this gives him a quiet total power that he wields without ever once raising his voice. He knocks on the first, he accepts the fold, he makes a mark in a book of his own and touches his hat and goes, and the whole transaction is polite as a church service and just as final, because behind his politeness is the street, and you both know it, and neither of you ever says it. The plain, brutal logic of it is the one you organized your whole budget around. You can go a little hungry and survive it. You can wear the coat another winter and survive it. You can defer the doctor, stretch the soup, patch the shoe, and survive every one of those small deprivations, but you cannot be without a door that locks behind your children at night, and so the rent sits at the top of every list you will ever make, above food, above medicine, above hope, the one line that does not bend. So on the thin weeks you thin everything else to keep the fold intact. The meat becomes a flavour rather than a food. The milk gets watered a careful shade. You eat the heels of the bread yourself and give the soft middle to the children and call it a preference, and you do all of it cheerfully, or at least quietly, so that no one at the table understands that this week the roof was purchased with their supper. The rent is made, the children are fed, if thinly. The math, once again, was survived rather than solved. You have become an expert in a subject no school teaches, the fine art of going precisely as hungry as you can afford without anyone noticing. You know to the ounce how much can come off the plates before it shows, and how thin the soup can run before a child asks. It is a terrible expertise. You would trade it in an instant for the ignorance of a woman who never had to learn it. When the fold is handed over and Mr. Szczepanski has touched his hat and gone, there is a specific relief that settles over you, low and grim and real. The roof is bought for another month. Whatever else goes wrong, and things will go wrong, your children will not be standing on the sidewalk with their beds in the street, and that certainty, purchased first and at any cost, is the foundation the whole precarious month is built on. You put the empty flour tin back on its shelf. You have kept the one promise that could not be broken, and you turn, a little lighter, to all the smaller ones you still can. You get one day that is supposed to belong to you, and you spend the whole of it on your own family's wash. There is no paid work on a Sunday, so Sunday is when the household's own mountain of laundry finally gets climbed, at the shared machine in the basement or the public washhouse down the block. You haul it, you sort it, and you wait your turn among the other women doing precisely the same thing. It is not rest. It is only the unpaid job you never managed to reach during the week, saved up and waiting patiently for your day off. The mountain has been growing all week in a corner of the bedroom, and by Sunday it is genuinely alpine, a soft grey range of everything 5 people wore and slept in and spilled on since last Sunday. You have washed the whole city's linen in the days between, strangers' sheets and boarders' shirts and hotel towels, and your own family's things waited their turn at the very back of the line, the way they always do, because the wash that pays comes first and the wash that only matters comes Sunday. The washhouse is a warm, loud sisterhood, and it is the closest thing to society you get. A dozen women and their mountains, the machines going, the wringers turning, steam on the windows and a low current of talk running under the noise, news and complaints and a joke passed hand to hand like soap. You know these women the way you know the women on the mill floor and the women at the market. Not as friends exactly, but as fellow soldiers. All of you enlisted in the same endless war against dirt that no one ever wins and no one is allowed to quit. The small bitter comedy of your day of rest is a simple one. It has laundry in it. The one day the paying world lets you go, you spend bent over a tub doing the exact thing you do for money the other 6 days, except that today it is free, because it is yours, because a family's own washing is not called work, it is called being a mother, And being a mother, as everyone knows, is not a job, and therefore never ends and therefore fills up the only day that might have been empty. You do allow yourself, in the middle of it, the small pleasures the day affords. There is real satisfaction in your own clean wash, a different flavour than the paid kind, because these are your children's things, and getting the grass stain out of the boy's one good shirt is a small private victory that belongs to nobody but you. The sun, if there is sun, is enlisted to help. The line goes up in the yard, and the whole week's washing hangs out snapping in the wind, and for a moment it looks less like a chore and more like flags. The children are underfoot, which is its own strange gift. On the paying days you barely see them. On Sunday they orbit you at the wash house, fetching the pins, losing the pins, falling into the baskets, and you scold them and you keep them close, and you would not, if pressed, entirely trade the arrangement, because at least on Sunday the labour and the children happen in the same room, and you get to do your job with your own life standing right beside you. By evening the mountain is gone, transformed into neat folded ranges of clean, and the line comes down stiff, cold, and smelling of outside, and you carry it all in against tomorrow. Your one day is spent. You did not rest. You never rest, and you have made a kind of peace with that, the peace of a woman who long ago stopped waiting for the empty day and learned instead to find the thin gold thread of pleasure running through the full one. Then you set the alarm for before dawn, because Sunday is over, and Monday, and the whole paying week, is already breathing in the dark. You look for better work in the newspaper, where the jobs are sorted into 2 columns and one of them is plainly not for you. The help wanted pages are divided down the middle, male on one side and female on the other, and the difference between the two is not the least bit subtle. The jobs that pay, the jobs with a future, the jobs a whole family could live on, sit almost entirely in the male column, closed to you by nothing more than the word printed at the top. You read your side of the page, the shorter side, the cheaper side, and you circle what little there is. It is right there in black ink, the whole arrangement, open, legal, and entirely unashamed, printed in the paper every single day. Help wanted male, help wanted female. 2 headings, exactly 2 recognized categories of person, and a line of type between them as solid as any wall, and nobody who set it or printed it or read it over breakfast thought it needed defending, because it was simply how the world was arranged, the way the sky is up and the rent is due. You have read both columns out of a kind of grim curiosity, and the comparison is its own quiet education. The male column has the openings with the words that mean a life: apprentice, trainee, foreman, salary, advancement, benefits. The female column has the openings with the words that mean a wage and a ceiling: girl wanted, light work, part-time, no experience necessary, which is another way of saying no future necessary either. You could do half the jobs in the men's column and you know it. The column does not care what you could do. It would genuinely stop a modern person who takes it for granted that a job is a job. It was perfectly legal. All of it. Out in the open. Endorsed by custom and untroubled by any law. Because the law that would forbid it has not been written yet and will not be for years. There is no rule you can point to, no office you can complain to, no line you can quote back at the man who tells you the position is not for a woman. The unfairness is not hiding. It is the system, printed daily, in 2 tidy columns. So you shop the column you are allowed, and you learn to read its little code. Girl means they will pay you like a child regardless of your age. Light work means the pay is light. The work rarely is. Pleasant personality required means you will be smiling at people for less than a man would frown at them for. You have become fluent in a language designed to sell you short, and you read it clear-eyed, circling the least insulting of the insults, because a woman with a family cannot afford to be too proud to answer an advertisement. You circle a few. A laundry wants a presser. A diner wants a girl for the counter. A garment shop wants finishers, piece rate, apply in person, which you already know means a room full of women and a foreman with a stopwatch. None of them will change your life. All of them might make the rent, and making the rent is the only ambition the column has left room for, so you fold the paper to your circled few, and you plan your feet for tomorrow. There is a version of you sometimes think, that got to read the other column. A you in some fairer arrangement of the world who saw apprentice and trainee and thought, why not me? And answered, and rose. You do not dwell on her. She is a draught on a cold day, a small useless ache, and you have a real life to run in the real columns you were handed. You put the paper down, you circle one more, and you get up in the morning and go stand in front of a man who has already, before you open your mouth, read you as belonging to the shorter column. You are paid less than the man working right beside you for the very same work, and everyone has quietly agreed to call your wage something small. They call it pin money, as though the dollars you carry home were meant for ribbons and treats rather than rent and shoes and coal. There is no law anywhere that says a woman must be paid what a man is paid, so you are not, and the difference is simply pocketed by whoever hired you. What almost no one says out loud is that your pin money is holding up the entire house. The phrase itself is a small marvel of insult, and you have come to admire its craftsmanship the way you would admire a very well-made trap. Pin money. It conjures a comfortable wife with a comfortable husband, spending her little allowance on hat pins and hair ribbons, a bit of harmless, weightless, and purely decorative fun that the household would hardly notice if it vanished. That is the woman the phrase describes. You have never once met her. She is a character in an advertisement, and her imaginary hat pins are being used to justify the very real gap in your very real pay. Mr. Coyle, who fills the pay envelopes at the shop, is a decent enough man, and the phrase is exactly what lets him stay one. He counts yours thinner than the man's beside you and slides it across the bench without a flicker, because he is not, in his own mind, underpaid a breadwinner. He has simply declined to overpay a hobby. He sleeps well. The phrase does that for him, turning a theft into a rounding down of something that never mattered much anyway. Meanwhile, the pin money is buying the coal. It is making the rent and covering the doctor and putting the shoes on the boy who keeps outgrowing them. And there is not a hat pin in sight. There never was. The whole of your wage goes straight into the machinery of keeping 5 people alive. You are not supplementing a comfortable life. In more houses than anyone downtown would guess, you are the difference between the family staying afloat and the family going under, and you are being paid for that in the currency of a joke. There is a sum they do not want done. The man beside you does the same work at the same pace with the same 2 hands, and his envelope is fatter, and the only difference the fatness rewards is that he is a man and you are not. It is not skill. It is not output. It is a discount taken on you personally for the crime of your own body, and multiplied across every woman in the shop it adds up to a tidy saving for someone, paid for out of your children's supper. You do not make a scene about it, because a scene costs you the job and the job is not optional, but you keep your own private ledger of the difference, and it is long. You know almost to the dollar what you are not being paid, week over week, year over year, and you know exactly where those missing dollars went, which is nowhere, which is into the ordinary background savings of an economy that has decided your labour is worth a little less because of who is doing it. The ledger will never be settled. You keep it anyway. So you take the pin money, because pin money spends exactly like the real kind, and you carry it home and turn it into rent and coal and shoes, performing the daily alchemy of converting an insult into a household. And when some cheerful voice on the radio or some smiling man at the shop calls it a little extra, a bit of pocket money, you smile back and say nothing, and you go home and pay the entire month with it, which is the only rebuttal that has ever mattered, and the only one you have time to make. You are kept part-time on purpose, and the purpose is to owe you as little as they possibly can. The hours are arranged so that you never quite count as a full worker, which means no promotion, no pension, no raise, and your name right at the top of the list when the work slows and somebody has to be let go. You can give a company years of yourself this way and walk out with exactly what you walked in with. The flexibility that lets you fit the job around your children is the same flexibility they use to make sure the job never really adds up to anything. The magic number sits just under full time, deliberate, precise, and quietly cruel, and everyone above you knows exactly where it sits. A full worker is owed things, a pension someday, a raise eventually, a certain grudging permanence. A part-time worker is owed nothing but the hours worked, so they keep you a hair below the line, 35 hours here, 32 there, close enough to a full week to run your whole life around and far enough under to owe you nothing at the end of it. It looks, from the outside, almost like a kindness. Part-time, they say, so you can be there for your family, and they say it warmly as though the arrangement were built around your needs rather than around their savings. And it is true that the shorter hours let you make the school and the supper and the second job, so you take it, gratefully, without noticing that the shape helping you through the week is the shape that guarantees it never builds. The trap is sprung slowly, over years, so gently you can miss it happening. You are loyal. You are good at the work. You show up through weather and illness and a sick child at home, and you assume, the way a person assumes, that showing up must eventually count for something, must ripen into security, into a little more, into a place. It does not. Part-time does not ripen. You can be the best and steadiest worker in the shop for a decade and remain, in the eyes of the ledger, exactly as disposable as the day you started. And disposable is the word, because you are also first out the door. When orders thin, Mr. Rourke, who owns the shop, walks the floor with his notebook, and he does not cross off the full men with their pensions and their seniority. He crosses off the part-time women, who cost nothing to shed because they were owed nothing to keep. He is sorry about it, and he crosses you off anyway. So you are laid off first in every downturn, called back last in every recovery, and the gaps between are yours to survive on nothing, a worker treated as permanent when it is time to work and temporary the instant it is time to pay. You watch the younger women arrive not knowing this yet, bright and willing, and you feel the urge to warn them and mostly do not, because what is there to say? Do not be loyal to a company that has arranged, on paper, never to be loyal to you. They would not believe you, or they would believe you and take the job anyway, because the job is the job, and the rent is the rent, and the whole grim education arrives on its own schedule, one unrewarded year at a time. So you work your careful 32 hours, and you do them well, and you refuse, quietly, to give the arrangement the one thing it cannot dock you for, which is the private knowledge of your own worth. They can withhold the pension and the title and the raise, but they cannot make you believe the withholding is deserved, and you do not. You keep your own quiet count of your own good years, unrecorded anywhere but in you, and you carry it home each night, the one asset that no layoff can reach and no ledger was ever allowed to see. You are working 2 jobs because the one wage in the house stopped being enough, or stopped arriving altogether. Maybe he was laid off when the plant cut back its lines. Maybe he was hurt on a job with no insurance and no pay while he mends. Maybe the drink took the steadiness out of his week, or maybe he is simply a good man in a bad market whose check does not reach the end of the month. Whatever the reason turns out to be, the arithmetic landed squarely on you, and you were never offered the luxury of asking whether that was fair. The story the country tells has one wage in it, a father's wage, steady and sufficient, arriving every Friday to cover a family with a little left over. It is a lovely story, and it describes a genuine kind of household, the kind with a union card and seniority and a plant that stays open. It simply does not describe most of the houses on your street, where the single wage is a thing that can vanish on a Tuesday, and where a whole family balanced on top of it learns, sooner or later, that one leg is not enough to stand a table on. So the second wage, yours, is not extra. This is the part the story cannot hold. Your wage is not a garnish on his. It is a second leg under the table, structural, load-bearing, the thing that keeps the whole arrangement from going over the first time his leg is kicked out. When the plant cuts back, your wage becomes the wage. When his back gives, your wage becomes the wage. You are not helping. You are the spare the family keeps under the floor, the reason a single piece of bad luck cannot quite finish it. Consider the man hurt on the job, because it happens all the time and the country has not gotten around to it. He falls or the machine catches him, and there is no insurance, no pay while he heals, no cushion of any kind, only a strong man suddenly on the couch with a mending arm and a family that still, inconveniently, needs to eat every day. And into that hole steps you, adding a shift, then another, holding the whole thing up with your own 2 jobs until he is whole, because the alternative to you holding it up is that it falls. Or consider the plant itself, which does not care about any of you. Orders slow, and the men are cut, and a paycheck that felt permanent turns out to have been a favour the company could withdraw, and a household that budgeted on it is left doing frantic arithmetic on a Sunday night. The single male wage was never as solid as the story insisted. It just looked solid, right up until the week it did not, and the families who had quietly kept a working mother in reserve were the families who did not go under. There is no bitterness in it, most days, only fact, because bitterness is a luxury on the same shelf as rest. You do not resent him. The market is not his fault, the injury is not his fault, and he works when there is work and grieves, quietly when there is not. You are partners in a hard arrangement, both of you rowing, and if the water takes his oar for a while, you row for two, the way he would for you. But you notice the gap, the way you notice a cold draft under a door. The picture on the magazine cover has you home, idle, and provided for. The fact has you on a corner at dawn and a mangle by noon and a mending husband on the couch, holding up with two jobs a household the country insists needs only one. You have stopped waiting for the picture to match the fact. You simply live in the fact, and you keep it standing, and you let the picture belong to whoever has the leisure to believe it. You go to open an account for the money you earned, and you discover that the money is expected to have a man's name on it. The bank will not give you an account, a loan, or a line of credit in your own name without your husband, no matter whose hands did the actual work that filled the envelope. So the wages you scrubbed and sewed and stood on your feet all day for run through him on paper, because that is simply how the paper has been built. You earned every dollar of it yourself, and you cannot so much as keep it under your own name. The bank is a cool marble and mahogany temple to a thing you are apparently not quite trusted with, and the man behind the desk is polite in the specific way of a man delivering news he considers obvious. He needs your husband's signature. He needs your husband present, or a letter, or his name at minimum, because an account, a loan, a simple, safe place for your own money is a thing extended to households, and a household, in the eyes of the marble and the mahogany, has one name on it, and the name is not yours. You point out, or you want to point out, that the money in your hand is money you made, not his. Yours, earned on your knees and at the mangle and under the mill lights, carried home in a pocket you sewed for the purpose. The clerk does not dispute this. He simply explains, kindly, that it does not signify. That the question is not who earned the money, but who is permitted to be trusted with it in an institution. And on that question you have already been quietly answered, long before you walked in. It would stop a modern woman cold, standing at her own bank with her own card. It was ordinary. Not a scandal, not a fight, just the settled arrangement of the world. A grown woman, earning, competent, running a household budget that would humble the clerk himself, and unable to hold a bank account in her own name because the law and the custom had simply never imagined she should. The barrier was not cruelty. It was something worse, an assumption so deep nobody thought to argue it. So your money lives under his name, and this works fine, mostly, because he is a decent man and the money is treated as the family's, which it is. But you feel the strangeness of it every time, the small cold fact that the one thing you have that is unarguably your own earned wage, is the one thing the world will not let you own outright. You made it with your body. You cannot sign for it with your name. There is a gap there, thin and permanent, between what you do and what you are allowed to be seen doing. You think sometimes about the woman whose husband is not decent, and the thought is cold, because you have seen her too. The wife whose earnings vanish into an account she cannot touch, controlled by a man who did not earn them and will not share them. You are lucky. You know you are lucky. But a safety that depends entirely on your husband being a good man is not, when you look straight at it, quite the same thing as a safety you hold in your own hand. So you make the account in his name, and you run it in fact, if not in law, and you keep your own small private fold of cash somewhere the paper does not reach, the way women always have. It is not distrust. It is prudence, the old prudence of people who have learned that a right which lives in someone else's name can always, in a bad season, be withdrawn. You button the fold into the pocket you sewed. It is the one account, unmarble and unmahogany, that has only your name on it, written nowhere but in your own careful head. You live in a city absolutely full of good union jobs that you are not permitted to hold. In Detroit, the union men have already won the 8-hour day and the kind of wage a family can actually live on, and the door to all of it is shut to you, on account of your colour, on account of custom, on account of who gets let inside. So you take the jobs that are left over, the cleaning, the laundry, the dishwashing, and you take them in bulk, stacking hours until your week runs close to 70. The good wage plainly exists. It simply sits on the far side of a door. You can see the good jobs from where you stand, which is the cruelty of it. The plants are right there, humming, hiring, paying wages that would change your whole life. Wages a man can raise a family on with one shift and a Sunday off. Men you know go in the gates every morning. Your cousin Walter clocks in at the plant and clocks out with a wage that put a down payment on a house. The wage is real, close, and walled off from you as completely as if it were on the moon, by nothing you can point to and everything everyone understands. The union won those wages, and the winning was real and hard, and you don't begrudge the men their 8 hours. But the union that opened the door for them keeps it closed to you, quietly, in 100 small ways that add up to a wall, and so the protections that were fought for and won in this very city reach the workers inside the door and stop precisely at your feet. The 8-hour day exists. It is simply not for the woman washing his coveralls. So you do the sums that unprotected people always do, which is to make up in hours what you are denied in rate. If the good job pays a living wage for 40 hours, and the jobs you are allowed pay a fraction of it, then you work the fraction twice over, 3 times over, cleaning by day and washing by night, until your week swells past 60 hours, past 70, a monstrous week built out of small underpaid pieces to reach an income a man beside you earns by clocking in once. 70 hours is not a number, it is a way of living, and you know it in your feet and your back and the grey hour when you cannot remember which job you are walking to. It is Monday bleeding into Monday. It is a body run past the point the union men's contracts would ever permit a body to be run, except that no contract covers you, so there is no line you are protected from crossing, and you cross it again and again, because the rent does not know or care that you are already past the limit. The plain fact under it, the one the shining wage rests on, is simple. The 8-hour day was not given. It was taken, struck for, bled for, and then handed out selectively, to some and not others, so the very reforms that made work humane became one more line dividing who counted as a full worker and who was the cheap, uncounted labour around the edges. You are the labour around the edges. The reforms lit up the centre of the room and left you working in its shadow. You do not stop, because stopping is not among your options, but you keep a clear eye on the door, and you teach your children to keep one too. That wage is real. That 8-hour day is real. They are not fantasies. They are things this country already knows how to make, already makes. For people it has decided to count, and someday, you tell your children, the door will open wider, and the good wage on the other side will have been theirs all along. You believe it mostly. Then you pick up the next shift, because 70 hours does not work itself. You are good at a great many things, and the world around you has decided you may be paid for exactly one of them. You could clerk, you could sew for a shop, you could keep a set of books, but the jobs open to a black woman in your city narrow, over and over, down to a single kind, cleaning white families' homes. It does not matter in the slightest what you can do. It matters only what you are allowed to do, and the allowed list is very short. So you walk through the one door that opens, day work, and you make it feed your children. The narrowing happens at every turn, politely, without anyone ever quite saying the word. You walk into the shop with the help wanted card still propped in the window, and the man behind the counter folds his hands and tells you the position has just this morning been filled. You are qualified, plainly qualified, and the qualification meets a soft wall that is never named and never moves. After enough soft walls, a person stops walking into them and turns, tired, toward the one door that will actually open, which is a bucket and a brush and somebody else's floor. It is not that you cannot do the other work. You want to be very clear with yourself about this, because the world will try to tell you otherwise. You can add a column faster than the clerk they hired instead of you. You can run a household budget that would strand a bookkeeper. The skills are there, real, sharp, and wasted. And the waste is not an accident of your ability, but a decision made about your colour. The logic of the closed door is brutal and simple. When every path but one is shut, the open one does not have to pay well, because it has no competition and you have no alternative. Day work can pay $1 a day precisely because it is the only door, and the only door never has to be a good door. Your lack of choices is not incidental to your low pay. It is the reason for it. So you take the bucket, and you are not ashamed of the bucket, because there is no shame in honest work, and you have never believed there was. The shame, if there is shame anywhere, belongs to the arrangement that handed you the bucket and hid the pen, that took a woman who could have done anything and decided she would do this, and paid her $1 for it, and called the whole thing the natural order. You clean the floor beautifully. You were always going to do whatever you did beautifully. That was never the question. You make the one door feed your children, and you make it do more than it was ever meant to do. Out of $1 a day you build suppers and shoes and a roof, and Somehow, a little more, a nickel toward a school book, a future pried out of a present that offered none. You take the narrow thing you were allowed, and you widen it, by will, into a life, which is a kind of genius the world will never put in the column marked skilled, though it is the hardest skill you have. And you raise your children looking at the other doors, the closed ones, so they know the doors exist and know that the closing was done to them and not by them. You do not want them to inherit the small poison of believing the wall was fair. So you point, quietly, at the clerk's window and the bookkeeper's desk and the whole bright hallway of rooms you were kept out of, and you tell them, those are yours too, whatever anyone says, and one day someone in this family is going to walk right through. Then you pick up the bucket, and you go make the open door pay for the day the closed ones open. You are tired in a way that ordinary sleep no longer reaches, because there is not enough sleep left in the day to get down to it. You are up before dawn and down long after dark, 4 or 5 hours a night for years on end, and your body keeps a careful ledger even when you would rather it did not. Your hands are cracked from the hot water, your feet are ruined from the concrete and the standing, your back speaks up on the stairs now. You have simply learned to work through all of it, to shove the tiredness aside like heavy furniture. The tiredness has layers, and you have learned to name them privately, the way a sailor names weather. There is the ordinary tired, the kind a night's sleep fixes, which you dimly remember from girlhood. Then there is the tired underneath that, the accumulated kind, the debt that has been rolling over for years and compounding, and no single night touches it, because the interest is always more than the payment. You live in the second kind now. The first kind is a country you used to visit. Your body has become a detailed and honest ledger of the work, and you can read it like a page. The hands tell the laundry, cracked at the knuckle, the skin gone thin and papery from bleach and hot water and lard rubbed in at midnight. The feet tell the standing, the diner and the mill and the mangle, arches fallen, a permanent low ache that has stopped being pain and become simply the sensation of having feet. The back tells the lifting, on the stairs, in a small sharp voice. The tiredness does something worse than the ache. It comes for your mind. Around the grey middle of a double shift, the thoughts go slow and thick, and you find yourself standing in a room having forgotten why, or walking toward a job and having to check, genuinely check, which one. The exhaustion is not just in the body. It fogs the lamp you think by, and the fog is frightening in a way the sore feet never are, because your wits are the one tool this life has not yet let you replace. You manage it with small, brutal tricks, because managing it is the only option on offer. You do not sit down in the afternoon, because a body that sits down at the wrong hour will not get back up. You drink the coffee bitter, black, and standing. You save the deepest tiredness for the trolley and the last 10 minutes before sleep, when it can do no damage, and you do not, ever, let yourself feel the full weight of it while there is still a shift between you and the bed, because the full weight, felt at the wrong moment, could stop you, and you cannot afford to be stopped. There is no cure, and you have stopped looking for one, which is its own kind of tired. The cure would be rest, and rest is the one thing the ledger will not release, because rest does not pay the rent and the rent does not rest. So you carry the exhaustion the way you carry everything, folded up small and kept out of sight, and you become expert at the specific endurance of a person who is never not tired and cannot say so, because saying so changes nothing. And yet the body, ledger that it is, keeps its own quiet loyalty and gets you up again. Somehow, on 4 hours, before the sky, your feet find the cold floor one more time, and the cracked hands light the stove, and the ruined back bends to the oatmeal, and the whole tired machine of you starts another day it has every right to refuse and does not. You do not know where it comes from, the getting up. You have stopped asking. You simply note, some mornings, with something close to respect, that the tired woman in the dark kitchen is still standing, and you go, on her behalf, to make the coffee. You do the one thing that keeps your children fed, and the whole shining world around you insists on calling it a failure. Every magazine, every advertisement, every bright new program glowing out of the television set says a good mother stays home, that a woman who works has somehow let her own family down. You are not home, because home does not pay the rent, and so you carry a quiet verdict with you everywhere you go. You are doing precisely what your family needs, while being told, gently and endlessly, that needing to do it is a private fault of yours. The verdict comes from everywhere at once. It is in the magazine at the doctor's office, where a serene, spotless, and endlessly patient woman presides over children who apparently raise themselves. It is on the radio and the new television, where the mothers are always home and always calm and never standing at a mangle. It is in the very air, a picture of the good mother so total and so repeated that it stops looking like a picture and starts looking like a fact. The cruelty of it is precise. You are working 2 jobs for love, keeping your children fed and roofed and shod, and the same culture that sings about maternal devotion looks at the corner and the mangle and the midnight ironing and calls it a lapse. You have outdone the woman on the cover by every measure that costs anything, and you are the one made to feel you fell short. You have held the picture in your own 2 hands. In the waiting room at the clinic, a woman on the cover in a yellow kitchen, not one hair loose, a child on her hip who has never screamed about socks. And the picture does its quiet trick while you hold it. It takes the low wage, the vanished husband's job, the closed door, everything that is done to you, and it turns all of it into something wrong with you. The problem is not the economy that cannot feed your children on 1 wage. The problem, the woman on the cover murmurs, is only that you are not her. It hands the whole public failure to the one person with the least power to have prevented it, and that person is holding the magazine. And you feel it. That is the worst part, because you are only human and the picture is everywhere. On the hard nights, the whisper gets in, and you wonder, over the ironing at midnight, whether the serene woman in the magazine would have a daughter who never learned to run a household at 9. Whether you have taken something from your children by not being the still center of a home the way you were told to be, the doubt is not rational. It does not need to be. It was manufactured, at scale, and aimed, and it lands. So you fight it the only way you can, which is with the plain evidence of your own kitchen. The children are fed. Look at them, fed and clothed and warm and loved so hard it aches, and if love were measured in the currency it actually costs, aching feet and lost sleep, and a wage carried home in a sewn pocket, you would be the richest mother in any magazine ever printed. You did not fail them. You crossed a city and a mangle and a marble bank for them. The verdict is wrong, and you know it is wrong, and knowing it is the small, hard stone you set your back against. The picture does not get the last word, because you were there and the picture was not. You know what it took. You know the corner and the steam and the note by the bread, and you know that every bit of it was the truest kind of mothering. Let the magazine keep its serene woman in her spotless kitchen. You will keep your fed children and your ruined hands and the quiet, unshakable knowledge of exactly what you did for them, which no advertisement was ever brave enough to picture. You get on the bus one ordinary morning and find another maid already talking, and what she is talking about is you. Her name is Dorothy Bolden, and she rides the routes on purpose now, seat by seat, asking the other domestic workers what they earn and what they are made to take, and how long they have taken it. She has begun to think that the $3, the $5, the no protection whatsoever might just be a thing that women standing together could actually change. You have never once heard anyone say such a thing out loud on a bus. You listen the whole way to your stop. She is a maid herself, tired, cracked, and real. Not an office stranger with a clipboard. She has knelt on the floors. She left school young for the bucket, the way half the bus did, and when she talks about the wage she is talking about her own, which is why the women lean in, not away. She is one of you, on a bus full of you, saying a thing none of you had quite let yourselves say. The thing she says is very simple, and it lands like a stone in still water. She says the wage is low because you are each alone. One woman on a corner cannot argue with the price. There are 10 women behind her who will take a nickel less. But 10,000 women who have agreed, quietly, on a floor beneath which none of them will go, that is not a woman on a corner anymore, that is a number the price has to listen to. She does not shout it. She just says it, seat to seat, and lets it do its slow work in the minds of tired women riding to their floors. It catches for a plain reason, the one that keeps you listening the whole way to your stop, because it reframes the whole thing you have carried alone for years. The low pay you had understood as your private misfortune, a fact of the world like weather, to be endured woman by woman in the dark. And here is a woman on a bus saying no, it is not weather, it is a decision, and decisions can be unmade, and the unmaking is not charity from above but something you might do yourselves, together, with nothing but numbers and nerve. You do not sign anything that morning. It is not that kind of moment. But something shifts a half inch in the back of your mind, a small, permanent turning. The difference between a woman who believes her situation is the way things are and a woman who has just heard, out loud, on a bus, that it is only the way things are for now. That half inch is not nothing. Movements are built out of exactly that half inch, multiplied across a great many tired women who could not, afterward, quite unhear it. It will take years, and much of it will arrive too late to help your own ruined hands. The protections, the recognition, the slow extension of the wage laws to reach at last the women they were written to exclude, all of that is somewhere down a long road, and you may be old before the good of it lands on anyone you know. But roads start somewhere, and some of them start on a city bus, with a maid who would not stop asking the other maids what they earned. So you ride to your stop, and you get off, and you go clean a floor for a wage that has not changed yet, but you carry the sentence with you into the house, turning it over while your hands do the old work, and it keeps its shape all day. You are still alone on the floor. You are, for the first time, alone on the floor with an idea, and the idea is that you might not have to be alone on the floor forever. It is not much. Some mornings, on the long ride in, it is enough to be going on with. You have weeks where the whole floor drops out from under you, and you hold the family up alone, one shift at a time. He is gone, or he is down, or the money is simply and suddenly not there, and so you take on everything. The day cleaning, the night laundry, the boarder, the piecework, the neighbours' children, whatever will bring one more coin through the door. You sleep in broken pieces. You eat standing at the counter. You count the days to payday the way other people count down to a holiday, and you keep the whole impossible thing upright anyway. These are the weeks the whole delicate system was built to survive, and you find out, in them, exactly what you are made of. Normally the jobs are stacked but spaced. There is a shape to the day, a handoff, an hour. In the emergency week, the spacing collapses, and the jobs pile directly on top of one another with no air between them, the corner in the morning and the laundry in the afternoon and the piecework at night, and the boarder's supper somewhere in the cracks, a brutal, seamless and relentless week, run on will and coffee. You do not plan the emergency week. You survive it in increments so small they barely qualify as plans. Get through this shift, make this trolley. Keep the children fed today, and let tomorrow be tomorrow's problem, because the whole thing is too big to hold at once and would flatten you if you tried, so you shrink it, deliberately, down to the next hour and the next hour after that, and you walk the week the way you cross a frozen river, one careful foot at a time, not looking at the far bank, not looking down. What carries you is not hope. Exactly. Hope is too large and too bright for a week like this. It is a kind of narrowed animal stubbornness, a refusal so deep it has stopped being a decision, the plain flat fact that these children will not go hungry, and will not go cold, and will not stand in the street while there is a single shift left in your body to prevent it. That is not a feeling. It is closer to gravity. It is the floor beneath the dropped floor, the thing that turns out to be there when everything above it has given way. You eat standing because sitting is a luxury of ordinary weeks. You sleep in the pieces the shifts leave, an hour before the corner, an hour after the laundry, a grey doze on the trolley that your body steals without asking permission. You become, for the length of the crisis, a purely functional creature, all output and no interior, a woman who has set her own needs on a high shelf and does not take them down. And then, because most crises do, it ends. He mends, or the plant calls back, or the emergency simply exhausts itself the way emergencies do, and the floor quietly reassembles under your feet, and the jobs space back out, and you get, one blessed night, a whole 5 hours in a row. You do not celebrate. You are too tired to celebrate, and anyway, you have learned not to trust the calm too far. You just notice, lying down, that the week did not take the children, that the impossible thing stayed upright, that you carried it, and it did not fall. You do not feel heroic about it, because there was no audience, and no medal, and no one, in the moment, even watching. There was only a woman doing what had to be done, because there was no one else to do it. But some quiet later night, weeks on, when the crisis is safely past and the children are asleep and warm, you may let yourself know, for one held minute, what you did. You held up a family with your own body when the ground gave way. Nobody will ever put that in a magazine. You will carry it, unphotographed, for the rest of your life. You put on the clean apron on a Sunday, for church or for the one calm hour of the week, and for a moment you look exactly like the woman in the advertisement. The apron is real. The bright kitchen, on the rare afternoon you finally get to stand in it, is real too. What the picture quietly leaves out is the corner, the tubs, the payment book, the key on the string, the 70-hour weeks, and the 4 hours of sleep. You wore the costume the whole country handed you. You just never once got to be only the woman wearing it. For an hour, you get to be the picture. The children are scrubbed, the table is laid. Nothing is on fire, literally or otherwise, and the whole hard machine of the week is, for one held breath, switched off and quiet in the corner. You have earned this hour more thoroughly than the woman on the cover ever earned hers, because hers was the whole of her life and this is the thin gold margin of yours, purchased with all the hours the picture does not show. The cover woman is home every hour. The home is her job and her costume and her entire world. You are home for one, wearing the same apron, and the difference between her hour and your hour is 6 other days that no one photographed, spent on your knees and at the mangle and on the corner in the cold. The whole of it, the thing you would say if anyone ever asked, comes down to this. And no one ever asks. The picture was not a lie. Exactly. The apron happened. The bright kitchen happened. The love that the picture claims for itself was realer in your house than in any studio, because yours was tested against a mangle and a landlord and $1 a day and did not break. The picture was not false. It was just cropped down to the 1 hour that flattered the story, with the 6 days that paid for it trimmed carefully out of the frame. And you know, tying the apron, that the same crop was performed on a whole country's worth of women. All across the city, all across the decade, mothers were putting on the clean apron for the 1 good hour and being photographed, in effect, only then, so that the corner and the steam and the key on the string went unrecorded, and the nation got to remember 100,000 exhausting lives as a single serene afternoon. You were all in the picture. None of you were only in the picture. The frame was drawn to leave the hardest part out, so you let the hour be what it is, and you don't spoil it by resenting the frame. The light is genuinely warm. The children are genuinely yours and genuinely fine. The apron is clean, and your hands, ruined as they are still for once, folded in your lap in a kitchen you kept, over a family you carried, in a life that was so much larger, harder, and more than the picture ever dared to show. You will take the hour. You more than earned it. You simply know, as you sit in it, that it was never the whole of you, only the part that was allowed to be seen. And when the hour ends, as it always ends, you will untie the apron and hang it on its hook for next Sunday, and the week will start breathing again in the dark, the corner and the tubs and the little book all waking up at once. You will meet them. You always meet them. But for tonight you sit a while longer in the last of the good light, a woman in a clean apron in a warm kitchen, both the picture and the whole enormous truth the picture left out, resting, for 1 more minute, in the only frame that ever held all of you, which was your own tired, unbroken, entirely earned life. So there you have it. You spent the night on a cold stove before dawn and a mangle by noon, on your knees in a stranger's kitchen, and up to your elbows in a neighbour's wash by midnight, hired from a car window for 15 cents and paid in a currency the whole country politely agreed to call pin money. You worked 2 jobs, and some weeks 3, and you balanced it all at a kitchen table so that 5 other people could wake into a warmth they assumed was simply free. Spare a real thought before you drift off, for the women who actually lived this, the ones who tied a key on a string and carried the picture of an empty kitchen all day, the ones who taught a 9-year-old to run a house because there was no one else, who thinned the soup so the roof stayed bought, who held a whole family upright with their own 2 hands the week the floor dropped out. They were never the woman on the magazine cover. They were the 6 long days the cover quietly left out. The apron in the picture was real. So was the love, tested against a landlord and $1 a day and a 70-hour week, and it did not break. It simply never once got photographed. Thank you for staying with me through all of it, the corners and the tubs and the small brass keys catching the last of the light. You have come a long way tonight, and there is nothing left now to earn, no shift left to make. No envelope waiting to be divided into little stacks in the morning. So let your shoulders drop. Let the pillow take the whole weight of your head. Let the corner and the mangle and the little payment book fade down into the quiet, until there is only your own soft breathing and the dark closing gently over the top of it. There is no second job tonight. There is only rest, and you have more than earned it. Sleep well.